The apartment was dark. Blood stained the white wall. A young woman's body lay posed, her head almost severed. It was August 24, 1990. In Gainesville, Florida, a peaceful college town. Students had just arrived. Dreams were fresh. Life was beginning. Then a scream. Then silence. And by the end of 5 days, 5 students were dead. All stabbed. All mutilated. All posed like dolls. Police had no leads. No evidence. No idea that the killer was just walking among them. This is not fiction. It all happened. Subscribe now to @ Unbelievable True Story. Because what comes next is even darker. August 23, 1990, Gainesville, Florida, USA. It was a Thursday morning. The sun rose quietly over a town bursting with excitement. Gainesville was alive with hope. College students were moving in, cars filled with boxes and posters, laughter spilling into the streets. Classes at the University of Florida would start in a few days. Dorms buzzed with energy. Roommates met for the first time. Fresh notebooks. New lives. But inside the nearby woods, a man sat watching. He had a tent, a knife, a tape recorder, and a plan. Who was the stranger living in the forest just outside town? Why was he watching the windows at night? And how could he disappear without a trace after killing? Daniel Harold Rowling was born on May 26, 1954, in Shreveport, Louisiana. He didn't cry like other babies, but he was screamed at anyway. His father, James Rowling, was a police officer, strict, cold, and cruel. From the day Danny was born, his father told his wife, "I never wanted this child." He beat Danny for wetting the bed. He locked him in closets. He once tied him up and left him outside overnight. Danny learned silence. He learned fear. He learned that pain was normal. And yet, deep inside, something started growing. Not love. Not dreams. Rage. At school, Danny was shy. He drew pictures. He stayed quiet. But at night, in his own mind, he imagined darker things. He started peeking into windows. He fantasized about power, control, revenge. As a teen, he ran away. Got arrested for robbery. Then came the military. He failed the tests. He drifted. From state to state. Job to job. But the thought stayed. The hunger stayed. August 1990. Gainesville didn't know him. No one had noticed the thin man camping behind the college apartments. Danny had arrived days earlier, driving a stolen black car. He set up a campsite. He sharpened knives. He practiced breaking into homes. And then, he chose his first victims. August 24, 1990, 3 a.m. Williamsburg Apartments. Roommate Sonia Larson, 18, and Christina Powell, 17, were asleep. Danny picked their apartment at random. He pried open the sliding glass door. Sonia was upstairs. Danny walked past Christina's room. She didn't wake up. He climbed the stairs quietly. Sonia was asleep on the bed. He stabbed her in the chest. She never screamed. Then he walked back down. Christina was still in bed. He taped her mouth shut. He raped her. Then he stabbed her, too. When it was over, he posed the bodies. He cleaned the scene and walked away. The next morning, a friend came to check on them. She opened the door. She screamed. Police arrived. They were shocked by what they saw. The bodies were mutilated. One was placed sitting upright. The other had been cleaned, then posed. There was no forced entry. No fingerprints. No clear clues. The Gainesville Police Department had never seen anything like this. From the woods, Danny watched the news crews arrive. He listened to the panic grow. He smiled. And then, he picked his next victim. August 25, 1990, 1 a.m. Krista Hoyt, 18, was home alone. She worked as a file clerk for the sheriff's office. Smart. Responsible. Kind. Danny waited for her to fall asleep. Then he broke in. He killed her. Raped her. Then came back, just to pose her again. This time, he left her sitting upright, with her head placed on a bookshelf. It was beyond horror. Police had no leads. The killer left no blood trail. No fingerprints. He vanished into the night. By August 26th, students were fleeing Gainesville. Parents drove in from out of town. People lined up for hotel rooms. Stores sold out of deadbolts and baseball bats. Students slept in groups. Everyone feared the Gainesville Ripper, though they didn't know his name yet. The mayor held a press conference. Campus police urged people to stay indoors. And still, the killer waited in the woods. August 27, 1990, 3 a.m. Tracy Pauls and Manitoba Wadder shared an apartment. Danny didn't expect a man to be there. But he didn't stop. He killed Manny first, stabbing him to death after a struggle. Then he attacked Tracy. She tried to lock herself in the bedroom. It didn't work. Danny broke in, tied her up, raped her, and killed her. Again, he posed her body. Again, he vanished. There were now 5 victims in 3 days. All young. All students. All killed at night. All mutilated. The entire city was paralyzed with fear. There were whispers of Ted Bundy he had also killed in Florida. But this man left no trail. And that made him even more dangerous. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story. Because the next truth we uncover might hit even closer to home. August 28, 1990. Just 5 days after the first murder, the Gainesville nightmare seemed to pause. No new bodies. No blood. No break-ins. The city held its breath. Was the killer still out there? Would he strike again? Why had he suddenly stopped? What no one knew was Danny Rolling had already moved on. After his 5th murder, Danny left Gainesville. He drove to Ocala, then Tampa, then finally to Sarasota. But he wasn't done with crime. He robbed a Winn-Dixie supermarket, stole a car, broke into homes, slept in wooded areas or cheap motels. Everywhere he went, he left behind fear but no identity. Police were hunting a ghost. September 7th, 1990. Ocala, Florida. Danny Rolling walked into a grocery store. He pulled a gun on the manager, tied people up, took cash. But this time, he got caught. He was arrested for armed robbery. No one knew he was the Gainesville Ripper. They just saw a career thief with a long record. He was fingerprinted, photographed, and locked away. Back in Gainesville, a multi-agency task force was formed. Dozens of detectives, FBI profilers, crime scene specialists. They noticed. The killer used duct tape. He cleaned the bodies. He posed victims in sexual positions. He left no DNA, no prints, no obvious motive. It felt like a blend of Ted Bundy and Jack the Ripper, but even more calculated. Still, they had no suspect. No name. No vehicle. Until someone remembered a triple murder in Louisiana. Flashback, Shreveport, Louisiana. Back in November 1989, nearly a year before the Gainesville killings. A family was murdered in Shreveport. William Grissom, 55. His daughter, Julie, 24. His 8-year-old grandson, Sean. They were found stabbed to death. Julie was posed just like the Gainesville victims. But no one had connected the dots until now. A woman named Cindy Jurisic from Shreveport heard about the Gainesville murders on TV. She called Gainesville police and said, "You need to look into a man named Danny Rolling." She knew him from church. He had once talked about wanting to kill people. He had disappeared right after the Shreveport murders. And now, the Gainesville killings had the same signature. Detectives listened. And they started digging. By early 1991, the FBI had tested semen from the Gainesville murders. It didn't match anyone in the system. But now, they had a name, Danny Rolling. They tested his DNA from the prison where he sat for robbery. It matched. Danny Rolling was the Gainesville Ripper. Danny had been in jail for months. But no one knew he was the killer. Until he told his cellmate, a man named Bobby Lewis. Danny confessed everything. How he stalked the girls. How he posed the bodies. How he covered his tracks. He even sang his confession into a tape recorder. In a soft, eerie voice, he whispered, "You're looking for the Gainesville Ripper? He is me." Inside his jail cell, Danny drew pictures of his victims. He made haunting cartoons of the murders. He wrote poems about demonic voices and a dark side he couldn't control. He claimed he had a second personality named Gemini who ordered the killings. But experts weren't sure if this was real or a twisted excuse. 1994. Danny Rolling went on trial in Florida. The evidence was overwhelming. His DNA. His confession. His prison drawings. Crime scene photos. But he didn't fight it. He pleaded guilty to all 5 Gainesville murders. Then he spoke to the courtroom. In a monotone voice, he said, "I've been running from myself for a long time. But I'm not running anymore. I did it. Not Gemini. Just me." Families in the courtroom wept. Some screamed. But Danny never cried. He looked straight ahead. The judge didn't hesitate. 5 death sentences. 1 for each victim. Danny Rolling was sent to Florida State Prison. There, he waited on death row. Over the years, experts interviewed Danny. They said he had antisocial personality disorder. He showed signs of multiple personality disorder. He had deep trauma from childhood abuse. But none of it excused what he did. And deep down, they all agreed, Danny knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to be feared. To be known. To be remembered. Parents and siblings gave statements. "You took her future. You took our peace. We live with this nightmare every day. May your name rot in silence." But others said, "We will remember our loved ones for how they lived, not how they died." For over a decade, Danny Rolling lived in a tiny cell. He wrote songs. He painted. He gave interviews to journalists. He claimed to be religious. He read the Bible. But he never apologized to the families. He said, "They wouldn't believe me anyway." October 25, 2006. Florida State Prison, 4 a.m. It was still dark outside. But death row was wide awake. Danny Rolling had less than 12 hours to live. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He sat quietly, eating his last meal. Lobster tail. Shrimp. Baked potato. Strawberry cheesecake. Sweet tea. He wrote a few last letters. Read from the Bible. And stared out the small, barred window. Just hours before his death, Danny gave prison officials a handwritten letter. Inside, he confessed to another triple murder from 1989. The Grissom family in Shreveport. He had finally admitted it. Now, it was official. Danny Rolling was guilty of at least 8 brutal murders. But investigators believed the true number could be even higher. At 5 p.m., prison guards escorted him to a holding room near the execution chamber. He sat alone, watched a small TV, read his Bible again. He refused to meet with the victims' families, refused to say, "I'm sorry." He spoke only to his spiritual advisor. When asked if he had any final words, he said, "I'm ready. I've made peace with God." But to the world, he said nothing. 6:13 p.m. Strapped to a gurney, Danny Rolling lay still. Behind the glass window, family members of the victims watched in silence. Some held hands. Some stared coldly. Others wept. At 6:15 p.m., his chest stopped rising. At 6:16 p.m., a doctor pronounced him dead. After the execution, reporters asked victims' families, "Do you feel closure?" Some said yes. Others said nothing could erase the pain. One mother whispered, "He's gone. But she's still gone too. My daughter doesn't come back." On the night of his execution, candles lit up the University of Florida campus. Students gathered to remember Sonia Larson, Christina Powell, Krista Hoyt, Tracy Pauls, Manitoba Wada. They were more than victims. They were dreamers, dancers, scholars, siblings, and friends. Their faces, not Danny's, became the image that Gainesville would remember. Though Rolling admitted to 8 murders, detectives suspected others. He spent years traveling the U.S. He knew how to clean up crime scenes, how to leave no trace, how to disappear. Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana. There may be victims in unmarked graves, whose names we'll never know. Rolling often claimed he had a second personality named Gemini. Gemini was cold, ruthless, unfeeling. Danny blamed Gemini for the killings. But psychologists weren't convinced. Some believed he created Gemini as an act of manipulation, a way to dodge guilt. Others thought it might be a coping mechanism from childhood trauma. No matter the reason, Gemini died with him. The Gainesville Ripper inspired a generation of fear. His story influenced books, documentaries, and podcasts. Some even believe Danny Rolling inspired the horror movie Scream. A masked killer. Young students murdered in college towns. Taunting calls. No clear motive. The director of Scream later admitted, yes, Danny Rolling's story was one of the sparks. In the years that followed, UF worked hard to move forward. New safety measures were installed. 24/7 campus patrols. Emergency call boxes. Student ID requirements. Counseling centers. The city of Gainesville slowly healed, but it never forgot. Each year, on the anniversary of the murders, white flowers are placed outside the old apartments. The pain remains. But so does the strength. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story. Because the next truth we uncover might hit even closer to home. Even in death, Danny Rolling's story leaves us with questions. Why did he choose those victims? What really triggered his rage? Could he have been stopped earlier? He left behind sketches, confessions, a haunting trail of destruction, but also a warning. Evil can wear any face, and sometimes it knocks when you least expect it. Experts say Danny Rolling was a case study in early childhood trauma, unchecked rage, split identity, desire for fame through violence. He was deeply broken, but highly aware of his actions. And when he killed, he felt powerful. Sonia and Christina moving into their new apartment. Krista walking into her tiny bedroom. Tracy and Manny laughing on the couch. None of them knew. A monster was watching. And today, the apartment buildings still stand. Renovated. Repainted. But underneath the drywall, the walls remember. The silence at night isn't always empty. Some say they still hear whispers. Footsteps. Echoes of lives stolen too soon. Have you heard this story before? What do you think truly happened that night? Could anyone have seen the signs? If you're drawn to real stories that stay with you, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story. Because every week, we reveal the darkest truths hidden in plain sight. Danny Rowling stood in the shadows outside the Grissom family home. It was cold. The wind rustled the trees. He had traveled over 400 miles. He had picked this house at random. Inside, Tom Grissom, 55, and his grandson Sean, 8, were watching TV. Upstairs, Julie Grissom, 24, a bright college student, was packing for a weekend trip. She had no idea she would never make it out. Danny broke in quietly. No shattered glass. No loud footsteps. He slit Tom's throat. Then Sean's. Then waited for Julie. When she entered the kitchen, she froze. Danny grabbed her. She fought. He strangled her, then mutilated her body. He posed her, just like he would later in Gainesville. For years, the Grissom murders went cold. There were no suspects. No evidence. But the staging of Julie's body was chillingly similar to what happened in Gainesville. When investigators reviewed photos years later, they saw the same signature. A towel draped over the mirror. A body carefully positioned. Bite marks. Hair washed and left on display. It was a pattern. But by then, Danny Rowling was already dead. Danny Rowling claimed he didn't kill alone. He said the murders were committed by a demon inside him. Gemini. He told psychologists. Gemini takes over. I black out. When I wake up, they're dead. Gemini was cold. Calculated. Vicious. Danny said Gemini was born after years of abuse. A protector. A punisher. But experts were torn. Was it real or just a manipulative lie? Even in court, his defense argued multiple personality disorder. The prosecution wasn't buying it. In prison, Danny Rowling became a prolific writer. He filled notebooks with dark poetry, drawings of demons, confessions, emotional letters to God. One line from his poem stood out. I watched their blood, I felt their fear. But the monster wasn't me. It was always near. The more he wrote, the deeper the horror seemed. He blamed childhood pain, a broken home, a vengeful father. But many asked, did that give him the right to destroy lives? Back in 1990, when the murders hit the news, the headlines were terrifying. College town killer still at large? Lock your doors, trust no one. 5 slain in 5 days. Students stopped going to class. Hotels were booked solid. Some parents withdrew their kids from school and drove them home. One reporter said, it was like a town waiting for war. We didn't know who would be next. Every night, residents double-checked windows. Some moved their beds away from doors. Police patrols tripled. Pepper spray sales soared. At the University of Florida, students slept in groups. Some slept with knives under their pillows. Others just didn't sleep at all. It wasn't just a crime. It was psychological warfare. Let's pause and remember the lives lost. Sonia Larson, 18, smart, quiet, a book lover. Christina Powell, 17, outgoing, funny, studying architecture. Krista Hoyt, 18, worked part-time as a sheriff's clerk. Manitoba Wadder, 23, a gentle giant, studying architecture. Tracy Pauls, 23, studying law, confident and fearless. Each had dreams. Each had families who loved them. They weren't just headlines. They were human. Danny Rowling's trial was unlike any other. Cameras flashed. Crowds formed outside. Families sat, silent and shaking. When Danny confessed, it was almost casual. Yes, I did it. All of it. He gave no real explanation. Only that God had forgiven him. Prosecutors played audio tapes Danny recorded of himself. He spoke in a low, eerie voice. This is the real me. My name is Gemini. I come to kill. The jury had heard enough. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced to death. Danny showed no emotion. No tears. No words to the victims' families. As guards led him away, a mother in the gallery whispered, "I hope he dreams of her every night and never finds peace." In the aftermath, experts studied Danny Rowling's life. They found years of school suspensions, arrests for peeping and theft, threats to kill his father, obsession with knives, dark drawings since childhood. Each was a red flag, but no one connected the dots. Could intervention have stopped him? That question still lingers. The killings had stopped, but Gainesville was still frozen in fear. Students returned to class slowly. Apartment rentals dropped. Locks were changed twice. No one walked alone. The scars left by Danny Rowling weren't visible, but they were everywhere. In the quiet. In the glances. In the way people checked behind them more often. When Danny Rowling finally faced trial, there was no fight. No tricks. No denial. He confessed. Coldly. Calmly. He admitted to all 5 Gainesville murders. He also hinted at others, including the Grissom family in Shreveport. In court, victims' families sat quietly. Some cried. Some stared. He never looked at them. The jury sentenced him to death. On October 25, 2006, Danny Rowling was executed. His last words? None greater than thee, O Lord. He sang a gospel hymn, then went silent. In minutes, it was over. But for the victims' families, it never truly ended. Why did Danny do it? Was it childhood trauma? Mental illness? Or pure evil? Could someone have stopped him earlier? Were there more victims we'll never know? And most chilling of all, could another Ripper still be walking free somewhere? Decades later, new students live in Gainesville. New memories are made. But some still visit the places where it happened. Some leave flowers. Some say prayers. Because this is not fiction. Every name, every scream, every detail you just heard is real. Have you heard this story before? What would you have done if you lived in Gainesville back then? If real stories like this stay with you, subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story. Because every week, we reveal the darkest truths hiding in plain sight. Watch the next video now, or explore the full playlist. The next true story might hit even closer to home.